Awakening doesn't start with light. It starts with loss. You think you're waking up to peace, clarity, alignment, but what you actually wake up to is disconnection. From friends, from family, from the people who once knew you best. Suddenly, conversations feel shallow. Their jokes don't land. Your silence makes them nervous. Their presence makes you tired. And you start wondering, what's wrong with me? But it's not what's wrong. It's what's falling away, because awakening strips away everything that's not real. And that includes relationships built on your former self. People who loved the version of you that agreed, laughed, played small, kept the peace. They don't recognize this new version, this quiet version, this version that doesn't explain itself anymore. And so they leave. Or worse, stay and try to pull you back. You don't lose them because you're wrong. You lose them because you're not resonating anymore. Frequency doesn't lie. When your energy shifts, the structures around you shift too. It's not personal. It's energetic gravity. But that truth doesn't make the silence less loud. The empty inbox, the missed calls that never happen, the loneliness after clarity. And here's the paradox. You woke up to truth, and it cost you connection. No one tells you that part. They show the light, the alignment, the joy, but they don't talk about the grief of becoming real, the grief of outgrowing people who felt like home. And that grief is sacred because it clears space not just outside you, but inside you. You thought you were losing people, but you were really losing the version of yourself that needed them, the one who relied on external validation to feel real, the one who adjusted tone, volume, energy to keep the peace, the one who stayed silent just to stay loved. That version wasn't fake. It was survival. It was the self you built to be accepted in a world that feared depth. But awakening doesn't let survival selves live forever. They start to crack, first in conversation, then in presence, then in silence. You say less, not because you don't care, but because words feel heavy. You sit in spaces that once felt warm and suddenly feel cold, not because others changed, but because your senses got sharper, your resonance shifted, and the people who once got you no longer feel like home. This is the isolation no one glamorizes. Not the physical loneliness, but the energetic exile. You're not just without people, you're without the version of yourself that needed to belong. And that emptiness is brutal. You begin to grieve not just the people, but the roles you played around them, the comfort of fitting in, the ease of small talk, the illusion of we. Now, it's just me, raw, quiet, unfiltered, unclaimed. And the scary part? You don't yet know if anyone will meet you here. You've burned the mask, but the mirror hasn't shown your real face yet. All you can do is keep sitting, keep watching, keep letting go. Because behind every goodbye is the space for something true. It's not just silence. It's a new kind of silence, a silence that's not just the absence of voices, but the absence of identity. No more group chats, no more calls that go nowhere, no more explaining why you've changed, just stillness. And in that stillness, something starts to echo. Not pain, not regret, but a strange kind of clarity. You realize you never actually lost connection. You lost distraction. You were never truly seen, only mirrored, not loved, only needed. And now that the mirrors are gone, the question remains, who are you without anyone to reflect you back? The silence answers, not in words, but in space. It invites you to sit with yourself, not as a role, a friend, a partner, but as awareness, just that. And yes, it hurts, not because you're alone, but because for the first time, you're real. You miss the noise. You miss the background comfort of being someone to someone, but you don't want to go back. Because now you see it for what it was. Comfort is not the same as truth, and truth, by nature, isolates, but it also cleanses, it clears, it makes room. So if you're here, in this same quiet, know this: You're not alone in your loneliness. There are others walking the same invisible path, others who've let go of the noise to find something more. And if this silence feels like yours, subscribe and tap the bell, because sometimes the only way we find each other is through the same kind of silence. At first, the solitude feels like exile, like you've been pushed out of life, like you've lost the map and the language to belong. But then something shifts. The longer you stay in that silence, the more you notice what used to drown you. Your intuition comes back, not loud but steady, like a quiet knowing rising from your bones. Your energy returns, not as excitement but as presence, a calm that doesn't need to be explained. You begin to move slower. You eat when you're hungry. You rest without guilt. You listen, not just to words, but to spaces between them. And in that space, you meet yourself. Not the self others knew, not the self that performed, but the one that was watching the whole time. You realize this solitude isn't a punishment. It's a ritual, a rite of passage, a furnace that burns away everything you're not. So what's left is clean, clear, solid. And from that solidity, you start choosing differently. You no longer beg to be seen. You don't chase connections. You don't settle for almost love, because you've met someone more real than all of that, you. And here's the hidden gift. Once you meet yourself at this level, you can never again betray your own frequency just to stay connected. You'd rather walk alone than walk away from your truth. This is what sacred solitude does. It doesn't isolate you from others. It prepares you to meet them with depth. And when you finally connect again, it won't be from need. It'll be from wholeness. Once you've touched your own silence, you can never again settle for noise dressed as connection. You stop craving company just to fill space. You stop forcing small talk that leads nowhere. You stop pretending to care about things that drain your energy, because now you've seen the cost. You know what it takes to betray your frequency, and you're no longer willing to pay it. Instead, something new begins. When someone enters your field, you don't ask, "Do they like me?" You ask, "Does my nervous system feel safe here? Can I remain honest in their presence? Do I shrink or expand when they speak?" These aren't social questions, they're energetic ones, because now your radar is different, sharper, cleaner, less tolerant of static. And the few who make it through, you'll notice it immediately. There's no effort, no performance, no spike of anxiety in the silence, just presence, just mutual recognition. Like, "Oh, there you are." You may not talk often, you may not share the same hobbies, lifestyle, background, but the resonance is undeniable. It's not about similarity, it's about vibration. These are the ones who see the real you, not the one you crafted to be loved, but the one who walked through fire and stayed soft. These are the ones who don't demand access. They meet you where you are because they met themselves too. And in their presence, you don't have to shrink, translate, or explain. You just breathe, and that breath feels like home. At some point, you stop waiting for them to come back. You stop checking the phone. You stop replaying conversations, not out of bitterness, out of clarity. You realize if they couldn't meet you in your silence, they were never really with you in your noise, and that changes everything. You no longer fantasize about being understood. You no longer chase closure. You no longer try to make your truth digestible. You simply stand in it, and in that standing you make a choice. Not loud, not dramatic, just firm. You'd rather be alone in truth than surrounded in illusion. You'd rather eat in silence than perform at a crowded table. You'd rather feel the sting of solitude than the slow suffocation of being half seen. That's not isolation, that's integrity. Because the moment you betray your own voice to keep someone, you lose yourself. And you've worked too hard, bled too deeply to go back. You've walked through the fire of forgetting. You've stripped down every false version. You've watched the old self die alone. So now, when a new connection arrives, you no longer ask if they'll accept you. You ask if you still accept yourself in their presence. This is the revolution, not to be loved, but to love yourself enough not to bargain, not to be chosen, but to choose yourself over and over again, even if it costs you everything you once begged for. Because now you know, if a connection requires you to leave yourself behind, it's not a connection, it's a trap. You don't explain your silence anymore. You don't apologize for your solitude. You don't shrink when they say you've changed, because yes, you have. You've changed in ways they'll never see. You've changed by letting go of who you thought you had to be. You've changed by choosing peace over people-pleasing, by choosing alignment over acceptance. And now, you belong to yourself. It's subtle at first. You walk into rooms and no longer scan for safety. You leave conversations that feel like performance. You say no without guilt, because every yes now has weight. You feel the difference between connection and clinging, between resonance and obligation, between being loved and being tolerated. And you stop performing, not because you're above it, but because you finally see it. You see the roles, the masks, the silent contracts. You see how much of your life was spent trying to keep others comfortable, while you suffocated in plain sight. Now, you breathe fully, freely. You don't need a full calendar to feel worthy. You don't need constant affirmation to feel real. You don't need the old tribe to call yourself whole, because the one who sits with you now, in the quiet, in the mirror, in the middle of the night, that one is enough. You've made peace with the solitude, and in doing so, you've made space for the truth to stay, not visit, stay. At the end of all the losing, all the silence, all the grieving, you realize something wild. You never really lost anyone. You lost illusions, versions, agreements you made to be loved, understood, accepted. What fell away wasn't love, it was attachment. What ended wasn't connection, it was codependence wrapped in comfort. And now, you're standing in the aftermath. It's not clean, it's not heroic, it's raw, quiet, real, but it's yours. For the first time, your life belongs to you, not to the projections of others, not to the roles you used to play, not to the fear of being alone. Just you, in presence, in truth, in peace. You no longer chase closure because you've closed the loop inside yourself. You no longer seek to be seen because you've made peace with being invisible to those who never really looked. And most of all, you no longer fear the silence because it's the only place that ever told you the truth. This is what awakening really gives you. Not answers, but clarity. Not people, but presence. Not applause, but alignment. And in that alignment, you walk lighter, you speak softer, you love cleaner, you don't need a tribe. You are the frequency, and those meant for you will feel it, even in your silence. So here's the question, one only you can answer. Who would you be if no one was watching?